Good morning. This is a video that goes over chapters 5 and 6, which we should have read by now. If you have not, you need to do that. The video with the audio and the words, the text, are already posted on your Canvas. So this is just a summary and analysis of each of those two chapters that you should have read. So just a recap of chapters 1 through 4. This is where we have the introduction of a lot of their laws and customs of Okonkwo's clan. We learned things about their culture, and we did a culture wheel last week where we looked at some of those words and kind of placed them into parts of their culture, like their language, like their rituals of food, like the palm wine listed there and the kola nuts. And so sharing those things are important because it represents the peace that they like to keep. And we know, or that you should know, that peace is more important to them than war. They look to Okonkwo's people. They look to trying to resolve things rather than just going to war. And we see that early on when there is a crime committed where a woman is murdered in a marketplace, and instead of going to war, they go to reason with them to say, you've done wrong. We need to be compensated. We don't want this to go any further. And so instead of war, you need to offer up someone. And then that's how they get the young man that comes to live with Okonkwo. And they're also offered up a woman to replace the guy's wife who he lost. And so peace is very important to them. And that, again, is something that is about their customs. So that's their social structure of their community and their family. And that social structure of family, which is different than ours, of having multiple wives and bringing in other people to live within your family, that we may be used to. But the idea of taking care of the elderly, the social structure of like the oracles, the people that they look up to, and the priests and the priestesses that they go to for advice, the different villages or tribes that are connected together. And so that is really important to them. And the reason why I want to stress that is because in one of the last videos that I shared with you, the tragic flaw that Okonkwo has, that kind of builds on it, or that kind of tears apart in him, because he wants to be a part of that community and abide by its rules, but his temper kind of gets the best of him. And we see that when he breaks the week of peace by beating one of his wives. And so that structure of community and family, their laws and customs, is really what chapters 1 through 4 were really all about. In chapter 5, we see more of that custom through their festival of the new yams, which I know that's kind of funny, like it's a yam, but to them that's a big deal. That's their livelihood. That's what keeps them alive. That's not only what they eat, but what they harvest. And so it's really important to them. And so we see that they give thanks to their goddess, the earth goddess of Ani. And that's important because we see, just like in Antigone, that they believe it's important to respect and honor the gods. You don't want to make them angry, because if you make them angry, then bad things are going to happen to you. And they don't want to bring those types of things upon their clan or upon their family. And so the feast is a really big deal, especially for the women. They get to see old family members and old friends from other villages, and this is where they get rid of all of the old and kind of paint themselves up, kind of like what women would do today. They clean their houses, they get rid of the old junk, they paint themselves up for a family to come over, and this is what they look forward to. And in this time, because it's, again, peaceful, Okonkwo is becoming restless because he needs to take his aggression out on somebody. And so he comes up with just anything, takes that aggression out on his wife, Ikwifi. And he ends up beating her. And afterwards, he wants to go hunting to, again, take out some more of that built up aggression that he has, because he's, a macho dude, if you will. And so Ikwifi kind of under her breath makes a comment about, because he can't find his gun, and she's like, oh yeah, a gun that doesn't shoot anyway. And so she's making fun of him not being a good hunter, and as soon as he finds the gun, he attempts or like mocks shooting at her, and does fire the gun, but he misses. And so, which, not sure if that was done on purpose or just kind of a luck that he missed. But Akwifi knew that, with that temper, but she did it kind of anyway, because she wanted to kind of show her spirit, like, look, you beat me, but you're not all you think you are. And of course, that angers Okonkwo a lot. A little bit more about chapter 5. Ikwifi loves wrestling, and she's really, really excited. And so, at this festival, they have this big wrestling tournament every year, and it brings back fond memories, because this is where, in the previous chapter notes, Okonkwo beat the cat, who had been like a 7 or 9 year streak. I can't remember what it was, and he won that, and this is where he won her heart. And at the time, he could not afford the bride price, and so she ended up marrying somebody else, but she could never get him off her mind, and eventually she leaves her husband to go live with Okonkwo. And so this time of year is very reminiscent for her, and she likes it. Plus, she's big sports fan. She loves wrestling. So we learn here also that many of Okonkwo's children are serving him, trying to please him, give him food, set up stuff in his hut, pass the time until it's time to go to the festival. And that's important, because of the characterization of, even though Okonkwo has a bad temper and maybe sometimes takes it out on his children, they still see him as a viable member of their family, and they want to show that respect. And so they're trying to kind of, gain favor with him. So Izinma, who is Ikwifi's daughter, the second wife, is his favorite. And since he is a kind of a rough guy, he does not like to show affection, because remember, I had said before, he deems this as a womanly kind of attribute, and he sees it as a big sign of weakness. And so even though he does favor her, he does not want to try to show it as often as he should. In chapter 6, we build the excitement, we build tension with the drums, and you can hear the drums in the distance. And one of the children even make a comment about it, like, oh, we're gonna miss it. And she's like, no, the drumming starts to kind of build the excitement, one of the mothers says, and says, that the wrestling doesn't start until dusk. And so it just builds that excitement. Because of that excitement, when it's time, the crowds need to be held back from this wrestling match. And it's, again, something that brings the community together and shows the power of the men. And these wrestling matches start with the younger individuals and kind of work their way up. And it's here that Ikwifi speaks with a priestess who used to be a friend of hers. And her friend is very fond of the daughter, Izinma, and they agree together that she is, what they say, here to stay, because she's finally reached the age of 10. Now, by saying that, you can see that it's often that children would die when they were young, whether they would say that it was the will of the gods, or it's just of, bad health, this and that. They believed that if a child reached the age of at least 10 in that vicinity, they were going to be healthy enough to be able to live on. And so that was kind of, even though an odd conversation maybe to you if you have already read, but it expresses a lot about their culture and what it is that they believed. And so that was kind of a significant conversation and moment. But it also shows Izinma's strength and importance within the family. And our chapter ends with a victory by one of the leaders of the teams, and all of the women singing and being excited. And so, again, it shows a lot of unity, and it shows celebration within the family. So this analysis of both of these chapters, it shows again the importance of the culture, which I've said a couple of times. And so this culture, not just all of Africa, but the importance of where they're at specifically is illustrated. And we see religious values that are emphasized, talked about that peaceful, harmonious relationship with other clans, with each other, except for Okonkwo. That's again a problem. Talked about how they try to avoid war and violence whenever they can, which again is significant because if that's what they believe in and they want to try to perceive to others, it's a problem because Okonkwo has a temper. They fear punishments from the gods, and so just like in Antigone, they consult an oracle on these important decisions that they make, and we're going to see that some listen, some don't, and that's going to be a problem. We've talked about, or I mentioned before, a chi, which is a personal god, and so it would be for us like, kind of like maybe your conscience, and that your chi kind of guides you and is going to make you either please the gods or upset them to make the right decisions or the wrong. And so that's what that is, and that's really important. We see these chapters help to develop the illustration or the obligation to the community, that it's not just your own family, but the community, the tribe, that you have a responsibility to. And setting that up now is going to be important because, again, Okonkwo being our tragic hero of this story and his flaw, that's what's going to eventually get him into trouble. But in these two chapters, the idea of masculinity and femininity really stress a point where, with especially Okonkwo wanting to find an excuse to beat his wife and go hunting and the wrestling, that's definitely the masculinity, which equals or has that idea of strength, and that women are kind of weak. And so the men kind of make fun of them, wanting to doll themselves up or paint themselves up and this and that, and showing affection is something that's weak. And even if you disagree, which I'm sure girls, many of you will, that that can be a sign of strength. It is just their focus, and this is what they see. And so anything that could be related to a woman, like something of showing care and nature and or nurturing and those types of things, and affection, that's considered weak. And a man doesn't want to be, especially in this era and tribe and culture, they want to be viewed as only that of having strength. And so that's the emphasis of both chapters 5 and 6 for you. So you can take these notes, read them before you've read, or just something that you look back to help you with your worksheets and your study guide questions, or just to clarify a couple of things that you may have questions for. So hopefully that has helped. And if you have any questions, just make sure that you are asking.